Hey guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments on YouTube. And if you're new here, I just want to state, welcome to the channel. This channel looks at the entire antiques and collectibles trade. And it also goes in depth with the fundamentals as to how these markets work over the short term or over the long term. If you spend any amount of time going through my back catalog on videos here on YouTube, you're most likely going to either get frustrated or you're going to get triggered by some of the topics that I discuss, some of the trade secrets that I reveal on this particular channel. It's designed to do that, guys. This is a non-hype driven YouTube channel that is designed to get you think in new ways. This is a finance channel that is geared towards antiques and collectibles. Now that I said that, I know a lot of you out there, if you're new to this channel, you may unsubscribe, but that's really what this is. I take you inside the antiques and collectibles trade from a financial perspective, and I show you how these markets work over the short term and over the long term. So with that being said, today we are going to talk about sports memorabilia. Now this is a very hot market in the overall antiques and collectibles trade. So I want to be sure that I at least touch on it. I'm going to be giving you my 5 top tips for investing in this market. Whether you're a beginner, whether you're an intermediate collector, whether you're a sophisticated investor that just wants to see if what you're doing matches how I would approach this market, you've come to the right place. So before we start out, we must define the term memorabilia. There's a lot of people in the overall antiques and collectibles trade that seem to think that memorabilia is the same as a collectible. That is not true, guys, and I want to make sure that I clarify this. It is true that a lot of memorabilia can be collectible, but the definitions of a collectible and a piece of memorabilia are completely different. So let me review to you what the definition of memorabilia is. Memorabilia reminds you of an event and commemorates it. So for instance, examples of memorabilia would include vintage concert t-shirts, boxing gloves worn by Mike Tyson during a fight, or even vintage vacation postcards. Now, all of you out there, whether you realize it or not, whether you're a collector or not, you own pieces of memorabilia. If you've ever been to Disney World, if you ever went to a theme park and you stopped by the souvenir shop and you took a souvenir home with you to commemorate that trip, that is an example of a piece of memorabilia. Now that obviously that piece of memorabilia may or may not have value on the secondary market, depending on what it is, what it was bought for, how it was made, if there's demand, rarity involved, if collectors want to pursue it. That's a whole other matter. Now today we're going to take this a step further. We're going to be talking about sports memorabilia. Obviously, sports memorabilia would be one type of memorabilia that either reminds you of an event and or commemorates it in the sporting world. So this would be, to go back to my original example, boxing gloves that were worn by Mike Tyson during a historic fight. That would qualify as sporting memorabilia. Now this is very important because this is one of the most popular markets in the antiques and collectibles trade as of late. Now, of course, if you guys seen the headlines, you see all these record-breaking sales that are occurring almost on a weekly basis, whether we're talking about rare coins, whether we're talking about art, whether we're talking about comic books, Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, graded video games. Dare I have to say any more about that? But regardless, make no mistake, sports memorabilia is equally as popular, and this is a market that a lot of people want to get in on from the ground up and either speculate in it or invest in it long term. And I'm here to tell you, you can take both of those strategies in this market and you can profit from it either way. I'm going to give you my top tips if I was going to approach this market with an investor mindset. That's really what I want to set out to do in this video. So the first 2 things I got to tell you before we get into these top tips is, number 1, you need to understand that if you're going to enter this market, there is a lot of potential for fraud, abuse, and counterfeits. I'm sorry, guys. It's just the way it is. A lot of you out there, if you have a thing for sporting collectibles, I would convince you before you enter this realm to at least start to collect graded sports cards, baseball cards, basketball cards, whatever you're into. If there's a sports card that's related to that and it can be third-party graded, that's going to be your easiest entry point, because when you get into dealing with game-worn jerseys, bats that may have been used by a particular player, like when we look at Hank Aaron or Babe Ruth, there are a lot of fakes, counterfeits, and fraudulent items in this world. And a novice can very easily lose his way in this particular market. We're talking about a more sophisticated market in the overall antiques and collectibles trade. Now, that said, this market is established. It's not really a mature market as of yet, but it is going in that direction. So I want to make this clear. When we talk about markets in the antiques and collectibles trade, remember, the overall antiques and collectibles trade is governed by three types of markets: speculative, established, and mature. Sporting memorabilia would be an established market. It's not yet mature, but it's really getting there. I honestly want to say probably within another 20 years, it's going to be a mature market on the antique side of the equation. So take that for what it is. I will also tell you that as a consultant in the trade, I get asked to really review a lot of sports memorabilia collections that come my way. And I can honestly tell you that only 10 to 15% of the items in those collections are what I would call investment grade or top tier museum quality pieces. This is the part of the video that's going to turn a lot of you off, guys. If you do not have the money to play in this market and do it right, go after some of these top tier items that are going to set you back in some cases 5, 6, even if you have the money, 7 figures. This is not a market for you. Yes, you can start small. Yes, you can start low, meaning you only spend X thousands of dollars on a certain piece. But overall, if you're going to be sophisticated in this market, you're going to have to get to the realm where you're comfortable spending $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 or more for each piece. And that is solely my assessment as to how to properly invest in this market over the long term. Can you do it on a smaller budget? You can. You just have to be very careful and know what you're getting into. So I want to make that clear. So my first tip for you guys is always start with a theme, a sport, or an athlete. And what I mean by that is, let's say that you want to come into this market and your thing is boxing memorabilia. If you want to go after boxing memorabilia, that is a perfectly fine starting point. But you have to have a realistic budget and a realistic analysis for what items you're going to be able to afford in that market going forward. For instance, if you come to me and you want boxing gloves that were authenticated and worn by Muhammad Ali, obviously you're going to spend a small fortune to get a particular collectible or piece of memorabilia at that particular level. So this is something that needs to be kept in mind. You have to have a focus. You have to have a plan in place before you enter this market. That's my first tip to you. Second tip is, again, I've already touched on this. Investment grade, top tier items are always the best bet of this market. So if you don't know what I mean when I say investment grade, that refers to the top 15% of any collecting category. So if you're going to enter this market, that's what you want to be striving for if you are investing in these items long term. Even if you're speculating in these items, the top 15% of the market does the best in the short term and in the long term, all things being equal. And right now, there is a lot of interest in this collecting category. Make no mistake. The third tip I'm going to state to you is to always do your homework, always do your research. And this is very important. You must keep abreast of previous price histories, previous auction records whenever you can. Study trends. If a market or a piece or a segment of the market is on fire, there may be a reason to avoid that market at present time. Always remember, speculators buy high and sell low. Sophisticated investors buy low and sell high. Note the difference. Look for items from mainstay sports figures that have a lot of staying power and popularity. Again, if you're watching this video this far in, almost 10 minutes, you already know who I'm alluding to. Your Hank Aaron's, your Babe Ruth's, your Mike Tyson's, your Muhammad Ali, your Michael Jordan's, whatever sport you fancy or whatever event you fancy, there is always a top-tier athlete attached when we talk about sports memorabilia. So this shouldn't be hard to fathom. My next tip, condition is everything, guys. Buy very high grade, near mint, or better items if you can afford them. Now, there is one caveat with that. Obviously, if you're going after a used bat by Hank Aaron or Babe Ruth, obviously it's going to have some wear and tear. That's going to help authenticate it. What I mean when I say condition is everything, if you have a choice between two like items, obviously go with the one that is in better grade, better condition overall, because those are the items that appreciate the most in the antiques and collectibles trade overall. Sports memorabilia is no different. My last tip, you must buy genuine and authentic items. Obviously, if the item is fake, you didn't get a good deal, no matter what price you paid. You can use autograph certification services, like I think PSA owns DNA. I think also JSA is another company that I believe is affiliated with Beckett, if I recall correctly. You need to do business with trusted dealers, trusted auction houses, and learn how to recognize fake certificate of authenticities, or even certificate of authenticities that have no meaning, meaning they're just BS. They were put out by somebody just claiming that it's authentic, when in reality it is not. This is all important. There is going to be more expanded videos on this going forward. I just want to at least give you my 5 tips so that you can get started in this particular market if you so choose. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments section below what you thought of this video, if you want me to do more expanded videos on this or not. Thanks, guys.